In this video, I want to give you an overview of the various sections within the Sermon Manager. These sections deal primarily with editing the search and filter features that come along with the Sermon Manager, such as the speakers, series, topics, books, and service types. So I'm going to go ahead and click on speakers. Now you've already added, if you've added your sermon in the previous video, I added a second speaker, Pastor Hank. Pastor John was already added in there. And in this speaker section, you can add multiple speakers just within here, and you'll be able to see them appear right after you add them, and as in contrast to adding it within the sermon section where you're adding new sermons. So simply just add in the person's name, John Johnson, for example. And you can add a description. This is essentially for internal purposes only, so you really don't have to add a description to it. It's not going to show on the home page. But go ahead and click on Add New Speaker. You'll see that it adds it in there. Now, if you want to add a picture, you simply have to click on this plus button, and you'll be able to add in or upload the picture and the profile picture, and click on Add Speaker Image, and it'll show, wherever there's a sermon that's associated with this speaker, it'll show that thumbnail, and that's you can see that on places like the home page, where there might be a sermon widget. Down here you see that little speaker icon. That's where it appears if that speaker is associated with this particular sermon. Now, if you once you're done with that, there's nothing else you have to do. You can simply add in all your speakers. It does show a count of sermons that they're associated with. So you can kind of keep that in mind as to if you want to see how many sermons this particular person preached. So that's helpful. And if I'll go ahead and go to the next section, which is the series section. And again, these are essentially series of sermons that you might be preaching through, and you can add the name of the series in there, and again add in a thumbnail. Now, I mentioned in the previous video that if you have an image assigned to this series, you don't necessarily have to add in a featured image into the sermon when you're adding it. It'll automatically pull in this image, so that's something that might be a time saver for you, or if you wanted to change the image for the entire series and you didn't want to go through every single sermon, this will help you to go faster in doing that. So that's helpful for time's sake. After you added those in, there's nothing really you need to do after that. So I'll go down to topics. Now, some people use topics, some people don't. This can be helpful if you're preaching on a particular topic and you want to add it into there. It's going to show up in the sermon filter. I'll just go ahead and go to that to give you a preview of what that might look like. So this would be, there's no topics in there right now that are assigned to a sermon, but if you did, it would show up similar to this, where it would show just a list of all the topics, and if you were to click on it, it would show any sermon that is assigned to that topic. I'll go ahead and move down to books, and I just previewed that just a moment ago. So essentially it's the same thing. You add in the name of the book, and you can preload all these too if you want to go in and add in all the Bible books, and that way it's ready to go, and you don't have to do any typing later on. But yeah, so that's something that is helpful if people are searching. They want to see any sermon that's related to the book of Psalms or John or whatever it might be. And then lastly, you have the service types. And again, I in the last video, I spoke a little bit about this, but essentially this is going to give you the ability to add various service types: morning, evening services, Christmas service, Easter service. And when you click on that, it's just going to filter any sermon that's associated with that particular service. So that might be helpful for things like Christmas or candlelight services, Reformation Day type service or series, things like that. So that essentially is an overview of the different filtering features. There is one more thing that I wanted to do that I think will be helpful, and that's just to go over the podcast section. These other things, templates, settings, those things, you don't really have to go into those. There's nothing really you would need to change in there. But the podcasts are particularly helpful. And I think I'll do another sermon. I'll do another video on this, but basically this is the default podcast, and you would be able to click on the podcast section and copy this link right here, which is the RSS feed for the entire Sermon Manager. So any new sermon that you add into it, if it doesn't fall into any, it falls into every category, it's gonna show up in this feed. Now you can be very particular with this, which is nice too, and I think I'll go over that like I said, in a different video. But you can make this, for a particular series or book or whatever it might be. So that's just an overview of the podcast. But I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me at support@reformedmedia.com, and I'd be happy to help you. Thanks a lot. Lord bless.